Saturday, August 20, 2011. This is Mercedes Diesel Guy, and as usual, I am an idiot with a wrench. Today, I'm going to be replacing the alternator on my 1995 Subaru Legacy. On Thursday night, I'm driving home from work, and I have a 45-mile commute each way. On the dashboard, the battery / alternator light and the brake light came on simultaneously. They went off after a few minutes, but they came on again a little later and then went off again. Now, that confused me a bit, and if it was just the battery light, I would have suspected the alternator or the belt, but the brake light there kind of threw me in. I checked Google, and it looks like when the battery and brake light come on like that, it indicates an internal problem with the alternator. It looks like my alternator is on the way out. This was already a rebuilt alternator, came with the car, and I don't know how long it's been in service, but I don't have any receipt or anything, so I don't have a warranty on the part. So I bought a remanufactured one. Yesterday, Friday, I drove the car in and out of work, not a problem. Picked up the alternator on the way home. I'm going to replace it now. I'm going to show you how easy this is to do. This is going to be about the easiest alternator replacement in the world, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Hopefully this will take under 10 minutes. If things start to go a little long, I'll probably cut out, long bits of the video there, but I'm going to get started now and show you how this goes. As with most jobs, I'm going to start with putting on a pair of nitrile gloves. I always like to keep my hands clean whenever possible. And then the next step, especially when I'm doing anything electrical, is disconnecting the battery connected. And if you're still running your original battery cables, that's a 10mm nut to do that. Next, you're going to need to take off this cover plate here in order to get to the alternator. Now this here is once again, the car came like this. This is long since damaged. There should actually be a second belt cover here over by the AC compressor, but there isn't. But once again, this is easy. This is a 10mm bolt on this end here. And since I replaced these belts recently and put all these bolts back in with anti-seize, this should actually be pretty easy for me. Yep. Bolt's still nice and easy to get to. And the other part of the belt cover here is actually held on by the alternator pivot bolt. And that is a 12mm. And the belt cover comes off. Next, I'm going to disconnect the cables here at the alternator. One of them is just on a clip, and that should just a little plastic tab here you press in on the back. I'm just trying not to wrench too hard and tear the wires out of the plug there. But feel it coming, and there it is. It has a 2-prong plug. And then you have the nut here on the top of the alternator. Loosen that. And pull off the cables here, which for some reason just there. Alright, those are out of the way. Next, you're going to have to take off the alternator belt. Once again, 12mm. First you have to loosen the lock nut here. And then the tensioner bolt. can hear a lot of the stuff is squeaky because this is a native Northeast car. Alright, the belt is loosened. So, I have the belt off, and I'm just kind of taking mental note of what direction the belt was installed, so you can put it back the same way. Anytime you're removing a belt and putting it back on, it's always best, if you can, to put it back on the same way. Next, you remove the lock bolt here at the tensioner. Just get that out of the way and don't lose that. Then the pivot bolt. Alright, I have the tensioner bolt out. So the alternator is now free to come out. It's you're going to kind of have to wiggle it to get it out of this bracket, but it shouldn't be that hard. And there. So now the new one's ready to go in. So here is the new alternator. Let me just make sure you can see that. Got this at Advanced Auto. I've used this brand of, this is a, oh wait a minute. Okay, this is a slight complication. It looks like there's a little bushing that should go in here that I'm going to have to transfer from the old alternator. So I'm going to shut down the video and do that. Video continued. Actually, that just took a few minutes there to transfer that bushing. Just kind of gently tapped it out of the old alternator on the ground with a hammer and a punch, and put a very thin layer of anti-seize on it, and then tapped it into the new alternator here. So then I actually did a couple of test fits just to be sure. So now the alternator goes back in, followed by the pivot bolt. And just to hold everything in place, I'm going to reinstall the lock bolt just really lightly here. Obviously, the next step is reinstalling the belt. So just get that back around the crank pulley and the power steering pulley and the alternator pulley. So now I am ready to tension this back up. So I get back here, I'm going to tension the tension bolt. That's still set to loosen. And this should go pretty quickly. When you want it tight but not too tight, you don't want it to squeal. And if the belt does squeal a bit after you've installed it, just retighten it a bit. Just a little bit more, but that should do it. So now I tighten the lock bolt, and once again, just to make it a little easier on myself, I'm going to take the extension piece off. Okay, that's nice and tight. Then the cover plate goes back on, and I'm going to have to loosen the pivot bolt again to do that. Alright, let's see if that gives me enough clearance now to get the belt cover back on. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the stuff. So, just gonna once again hand thread in the 10mm bolt, and then retighten the pivot bolt here, for which I now will need the extension in order to clear the belt guard. And I think this is about good. Yeah, that's nice and tight there. So now I reconnect the cables. And it doesn't need to be too tight. So that's on, and that bolt, which doesn't need to be too tight either. I'm going to move my tools out of the way here and reconnect the battery. That should do it. I'm going to give this a start for you. Okay, the car is running. The battery light is not coming on. Now, this is not really conclusive. I'm going to have to drive the car and see how it behaves, but at least now I have a remanufactured alternator with a limited lifetime warranty, so if this one's a problem, I can take it back and exchange it for another. Alright, catch you on the next video.